So this retreat has had a lot of, has had sort of motifs of touching into direct experience and just letting it be, letting that be our teacher, which is kind of all of this, really. I mean, it's like, if there's a practice, I suppose that's it. But this retreat has definitely come back to that with multiple conversations and the emotional textures, for whatever reason. And if there's anything that inhibits just going right to what the experience is, so to speak, I might say, depending on sort of insight, you might say, just getting out of the way of the experience, letting it be exactly as it is, which is non-dualistic. There's not someone in here or anywhere experiencing it as an object. Sound and appearance of sound and knowing of sound are all really just there. And they're also just that. So if there's anything that inhibits, because there kind of has to be, because it is very natural. It is rather, again, paradoxically, like, how could this ever be overlooked? And yet, we've all overlooked it somehow at times, right? So what gets in the way is just something called resistance, maybe, or saying no to experience, which is totally habitual. No one really pulled you aside as a child and goes, okay, here's how you say no to your emotions. It's really important. You start to feel something, say no to it. And the best way to do that is fantasize about something else, or get on the internet, or start shopping. No one tells you that stuff, but we all learn it. And I should say that saying no in the relative world is actually important to learn. It's a skill you have to learn. You have to have good boundaries. You have to have discernment in the relative world. But we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, in a sense. That we try to apply that kind of discernment to identity for some reason. Yeah, even that's saying a lot. It's like there's no one really doing that. It's just a mental process, but it's trying to apply yes and no. Like, I want it, I don't want it. Trying to apply that to experience, to intimate experience, to the sense fields, to our own thoughts. And it just turns out you don't have to. You don't have to have discernment when it comes to immediate experience. Discernment just becomes a distraction. It can't actually stop immediate experience either, of course. There's nothing, no matter how loud your mind is, that sound isn't going to not be there. But you may not notice it. So then what do we do about the no? This has also come up a bunch of times in this retreat with the Q&As and so forth. What do we do about the resistance? Well, part of it is the same as we do with any emotion or any experience. We just meet it. Okay, there's resistance here. There's something here that's just saying no. No to the temperature in the room. No to the body sensation. No to the thought in my mind. It's just here saying no. And really trying to just, first of all, acknowledge it in that way, and then maybe touch in if you can. This one's a little slippery because if you're feeling sadness or grief, often you know right where it is. Like, oh, it's in my chest, or something. When it's resistance, it's a little slippery because where is it? And yet you know it has an effect. There's an effect, but it can be hard to actually localize. So yeah, starting with acknowledgement is go, okay, there's resistance here. You can be here. And just depending on your own style or personality, you can take that in whatever direction you want. You can say, okay, if you're here, I want to know you. I might as well know you. I might as well know, what do you have to show me? What do you have to say? What's your voice? Is it a child's voice? Is it an adolescent voice? Is it your parents' voice? What are the words it uses? What is it resisting? What is it pointing to and saying no? And why? What is its reasoning? So you can understand it. You can try to understand it that way. You can sort of intellectually empathize with it. You can offer it love or connection or compassion or space, almost like a meta type practice. Just try to cultivate some love in your heart that you have for any being, family member, a pet, your grandmother, whatever, just cultivate that. And when you're feeling it, then just ask yourself, can I apply this to the resistance? Can I? Don't force it, just ask. Can I apply even 1% of this love and acceptance to the resistance? So you may resonate with that approach. You may resonate with a meta approach or a love and acceptance, compassion-based approach. You can also just try all of these. You can surrender to it. Okay, I surrender to you, resistance. I really surrender to you. How's your body want to move when you surrender to resistance? What do you want to say when you surrender to resistance? Embody it. Give it a voice. Act it out. It's another approach. Fourth approach would be, something relational. Talk to someone, that you trust. You're a therapist or a friend or maybe even a non-dual facilitator, and just say, I want to explore resistance, but it's so opaque to me. I can't get to it. For some reason, I don't know. I know it's there, but maybe can you help me explore it through inquiry, for instance? So relationally, that can be helpful as well. And I think the fifth thing that's coming to me, which is really overarching with all of these, and it's one of the harder things to cultivate in practice, in spiritual practice, and that is patience. It's hard to cultivate kind of because patience, if you think about it in terms of time, then it's almost confined. It makes you feel confined in time. But it's a different kind of patience. It's more like a trust in prajna wisdom, trust in transcendent wisdom, trust in the Dharma vehicle, trust in shunyata, whatever. Trust in Guanyin, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Trust in God. However that makes sense to you. But that kind of deep trust that, okay, this will play out just how it has to play out. It'll play out just right. And I relinquish my need for control of the process. That's a big part of the trust. It's a big part of the patience, is to realize maybe there's things about this you don't know, or you can't see, or their perspective's not, you have a limited perspective. Maybe a mind-blowing, earth-shattering, identity-destroying awakening right now would be too disruptive in your life. Maybe it's not exactly the right time, but you can still do emotion work. You can still do inquiry. You can still practice. You can still go to retreat. That's just an example. The reason I say that is because I find that that's a bad way of saying it, I guess, but often later down the road in spirituality and in this process, I guess in sort of retrospect, often you realize, man, that was timed really well. I remember my own Zen teacher once in Dokusan just saying that. He's like, all of this is just, it's clockwork. It's like, it's so perfectly organized in a way that we can't talk about. Not in a scientific way and not a logical way. But there's a true genius in a sense to how this plays out for you in the particular. It's something you couldn't design. None of us could. But there's a sort of perfect timing to all of it. That's what I mean by the patience. Just be patient. You're in the right place at the right time. You can't not be. And maybe if you look close enough at what resistance is or where it is or how it's functioning, you might not be able to find it. If you do it gently enough with enough compassion, curiosity, and lack of self-interest, meaning don't bring an agenda into the inquiry, but do the inquiry for its own sake, you might find what I was discussing up in Q&A yesterday with the hand analogy of pushing against the hand. And if I'm pushing against your hand, the harder I push, the harder you have to push back. When you realize you're doing it to yourself, you're pushing against your own hands. And the moment you stop pushing on one side, there's no pushing on the other. There's not even pushing. You can't even call it pushing when it's fully met. So resistance is like that. When it's fully met, there's no resistance. Paradox, but utterly true. Utterly true. You can move so seamlessly with reality. The Shin Ming points to this probably better than anything I've ever read. It's really beautiful. But to wake up to that seamless movement with reality, you do have to go through a good amount of exploration of resistance in one form or another.